The Ryder Cup is now in the bag and done, so let's review the entire event. Let's look at the venue and how it stood up to the event, the fans, the good and the bad, a breakdown of each of the day's play and controversies, the final result and what it means for the event moving forward. Let's talk about the captains and their decisions, and let's rate each player from both teams. And we'll finish with some final conclusions around the event. I'm Graham. Now let's review the Ryder Cup 2025. The venue for the event was Bethpage Black Golf Course in New York, a public golf course run by the state park. From an aesthetics point of view, I have to say the course looked phenomenal on TV. A number of the holes have elevated tees, snaking fairways, making the vista from behind the tees exceptional. The par 3s are all brilliant as well, and the overall condition of the course was spectacular, as we should expect. The golf course is always advertised as being one of the toughest tests, including the sign that normally adorns the first tee warning of the difficulty. I previewed the course and some of the holes in a previous video and clearly think most people thought the course would be a tough challenge even for the best in the world. However, two factors were not taken into account. One by choice, which we will cover later, and the other was Mother Nature. The opening ceremony that should have been done on Thursday was moved to Wednesday due to expected storms on Thursday. The weather was to have an effect, something that United States captain Keegan Bradley was keen to point out in a press conference on Saturday evening, which to some appeared to be a deflection, an excuse, and to others was simply stating fact. This was also repeated by Bradley in the team press conference at the end of the event. The rain had softened the course, the tournament was played under pick, clean and place rules, and the greens became receptive to approach shots, even from the rough. The putting surfaces were slower than the American captain had hoped they would be, although I have doubts over how much he felt firm, fast greens would be beneficial to the US side. After all, these are not the years when European players didn't play the PGA Tour week in, week out. The other defining factor was the setup of Bethpage Black. The US cut the rough, shortened the course and took away its teeth in the belief again this would favour their side. But again, we will talk more about this when discussing the captains later. All in all, I felt the course was well worthy of holding the event and did so well. The fans, the good and the bad. The Ryder Cup is one of those sporting events that attracts eyes on the sport from people that normally may not watch much golf, in the same way as the Super Bowl, the Olympics and the World Cup do for their respective sports. In that regard, it is a great showcase to bring people into the sport that so many of us dearly love. On the flip side, any unsavoury events are under the spotlight and could have a negative impact on how our sport is viewed. It was great to see both sides' supporters dressed up, shouting hard for their respective teams and bringing an amazing atmosphere. However, as the week went on, some of the fans' interactions got a bit out of hand, including the MC on the first tee starting off a chant including a swear word aimed at Europe's Rory. Obviously, this event is drawing children as well as adults, and it's clear that this sort of behaviour was not acceptable, and the MC in question resigned and apologised, and rightly so. The New York crowd were always expected to be boisterous, and apparently the European team had been wearing VR headsets to acclimatise themselves to what the atmosphere might be like. At times, the cheering and the partisan booing, which is all fine, degenerated into personal abuse of the players and their families, which is not the way golf needs to be portrayed on such a global stage. And I think more was needed to be done to make this the best showcase of our great sport to the masses, and not what it became at times. Again, as always, the minority appeared to impact more than the majority, who were there to watch a spectacle unlike anything else and cheer on their respective team. So let's break down each day's sessions. Day 1, morning foursomes. The pairings were drawn on Thursday evening, and on Friday morning at 7 AM Eastern Time, Bryson stood on the first tee, some 350 yards away from the green, and pummeled a driver over the trees of the dogleg just short of the green. The crowd went wild and off we went. As the foursomes continued, it became clear that Europe were gaining the advantage. Oberg and Fitzpatrick had got up early on Scheffler and Henley, as had McIlroy and Fleetwood on Morikawa and English. Partway through the back nine, the first matchup of DeChambeau and Thomas versus Rahm and Hatton was firmly becoming Europe's as well, meaning the first three matches were all in Europe's hands. As the morning came to an end, it had stayed that way, with only Schauffele and Cantley providing some light for the USA team. The foursomes results ended as you can see on the screen, and Europe took a 3-point to 1-point lead into the afternoon day one fourballs. Immediately after, if not even before a ball had been struck, people began to dissect the pairings. From a European side, it was clear that Rahm and Hatton and McIlroy and Fleetwood would pair up, as it was for the US team for pairings Cantley and Schauffele and Scheffler and Henley. I had already picked DeChambeau and Thomas to play, but the huge surprise came in the match where Captain Bradley picked Morikawa and English as a pair. I suspected English may play foursomes, as in an interview earlier in the week, he had stated he had been testing other golf balls. As you will have known from my other pre-match content, I was sceptical about Morikawa even being on the team. And once they had drawn McIlroy and Fleetwood, as far as I was concerned, it was a guaranteed European point. And that proved to be the case with a 5-4 demolition. As the day one fourballs kicked off, President Trump flew in. Could that inspire the US team to an afternoon session win? Sadly, for the US fans, the answer was no. Scottie Scheffler fell to his second defeat of the day, although the bright spot for the USA team was Young and Thomas decimating Oberg and Højgaard 6 and 5, with Cam Young looking every bit the player I thought he would. The results were as per the screen in the afternoon, and although the losing margin was slightly less for the US, what seemed like an unbelievable outcome of Europe winning both opening sessions had occurred, with Europe winning the afternoon session 2.5, 1.5. Apart from that, it was a reasonably uneventful afternoon. Bradley put the rest of his rookies out, and Luke Donald gave Rasmus Højgaard a game, although my concerns about his form rang true with the loss he suffered. So at the end of day one of the 2025 Ryder Cup, something of a shock had occurred. Europe had won both sessions, which was surely not what anyone was expecting, and the score was USA 2.5 and Europe 5.5. The pairings came in for day two morning foursomes, and collective groans could be heard from all corners of the United States, it seemed. Europe had kept all the same pairings from day one, but shuffled their order slightly. Keegan Bradley did make one change, creating a team of DeChambeau and Young, but inexplicably, the pairing he didn't split up was Morikawa and English. My only thought is that this must have been golf ball related, as otherwise players like Spawn and Griffin should surely have featured, even though they were rookies, following the poor performance of this pairing on day one. For me, JJ Spawn just oozed foursomes, but as the only Shricks-on player on Team USA, was this a factor? I had already raised the foursomes issue around Ben Griffin and his max fly ball in earlier videos. Anyway, back to Morikawa and English. Inexplicably, they had drawn McIlroy and Fleetwood again, and the writing was really on the wall there, even though this was a session the United States really needed to win. Day two began with the slightly weird scenario of the US team wearing majority blue and Europe red. Once I had worked out who was who, the morning foursomes were underway. The results from this session are as you see, and again, Cam Young bought it, and with DeChambeau they easily put away Oberg and Fitzpatrick. Was that going to inspire the rest of the team? Clearly not, as once more Europe won the session 3-1 and did something rarely seen, winning the first three sessions in an away Ryder Cup. Scheffler fell once again, and his record now sat at 0-3, which was seen as a huge shock to everyone. With the score now sitting at USA 3.5 and Europe 8.5, this was beginning to get a bit worrying for everyone rooting for the USA. As the fourballs for the afternoon were announced, Europe were keeping it pretty consistent, with the exception that Victor Hovland had niggled a neck injury in the morning and was replaced at short notice by Tyrrell Hatton. Would this have an impact on the team? Keegan Bradley appeared to shuffle the deck, desperately trying to find pairings and points in the afternoon, with results appearing as you can see here. Young and Thomas once again came out, but this time met McIlroy and Lowry, with Lowry really stepping up in a very hostile atmosphere and seemingly helping get his buddy McIlroy through the session. By now the atmosphere was changing and the fans became more and more out of order, especially in the first two matches. Scheffler was put out in a marquee pairing with DeChambeau, but even this didn't prevent him from racking up another loss and crazily going 0-4 on the first 2 days, something few would have predicted. The match with Fleetwood and Rose got spicy on the 15th green when Rose took exception to Bryson's caddy doing his thing on the greens while it was Rose's turn to play. He said so on the green, and following the completion of the hole, DeChambeau took umbrage to this and they walked off the green. All the way up to the next tee, the ruckus continued with Scheffler's caddy Ted Scott and Francesco Molinari, a European vice-captain, getting involved on the walk up the hill to the 16th tee. By the time the tee shots were taken, it seemed to have calmed down and the match was closed out on the 16th green in favour of Europe once more. Spaun and Schauffele were the single bright light for Team USA in the afternoon, and Spaun played fantastic golf and once again just made me ask the question, why was he not played more on the first 2 days? He was clearly capable, clearly playing well, and clearly a good fit for both pairs' formats, minus his golf ball. Although the afternoon fourballs were considerably closer affairs, by the end of play, Europe had once again won the session 3-1 and done the absolute unthinkable of winning all 4 pairs sessions at an away Ryder Cup. With the score now sitting at USA 4.5 and Europe 11.5, the talk was more about how quickly this was going to get done on Sunday, with Europe only needing 2.5 points to retain the Ryder Cup and the USA needing 10 out of 12 points to win. As the draw came out for the singles, I don't think there were any major surprises. Keegan Bradley had to give the team talk of a lifetime that evening and the following morning to stop this from being a humiliation. Although, as we know, the US team notoriously plays singles better than Europe, even the most die-hard of US supporters must have thought this just a step too far. As the players arrived for the Sunday singles matches, news came out that Viktor Hovland's neck injury, a disc, was not good and he had to pull out of his match injured. This created the unusual scenario where Keegan Bradley then had to pull his player out and the match would be classed as a half point to both teams. In this scenario, the unlucky man was Harris English. So as we started the singles matches, the score was USA 5, Europe 12, much to Keegan Bradley's disgust around this rule, although it has been in place since around 1971 and has been used by both teams during previous events. As the singles matches got underway, the top of the board began to turn blue early, as all other days had, and by the time Fitzpatrick was 5 up on DeChambeau through 7 holes, it seemed likely everyone in Europe may for the first time in 3 days get to bed at a decent time. However, the US team had other ideas. I don't know what Captain Bradley had said to his team, or whether they just woke up and realised that they could be humiliated for history, but something happened. Bryson began the comeback of a lifetime at the 8th, and by the 16th tee he was just 1 down to a Mats Fitzpatrick who was clearly feeling the pressure at this point. As Cam Young completed a win on the 18th in the first match, cementing himself as one of the best players on the team, and in my eyes a rookie performance for the ages, suddenly things didn't look so good for Europe. Justin Thomas repeated Young's feat on the last and picked up a point against Fleetwood, and so it continued. DeChambeau pulled back Fitzpatrick and picked up a half point on the 18th, and by this time the European supporters were beginning to wonder where the 2.5 points needed to win were coming from. Both McIlroy and Scheffler playing against each other looked mentally spent, with McIlroy looking like a shell of himself. And finally, Scheffler picked up a point this Ryder Cup. Rahm was getting comprehensively outplayed by Xander Schauffele, and the only real blue looking solid on the board was Oberg against Cantley. It didn't even stop there, as the USA team, buoyed by the early wins, kept pushing and pushing, adding point after point after point. Oberg completed his win against Cantley, meaning Europe only needed a half point to retain and a point to win outright, but even finding that was looking tough. Spaun took down Straka, Lowry was down, Højgaard was down, and Hatton and McIntyre were battling against Morikawa and Burns respectively. Lowry stepped onto the 18th tee 1 down to Henley, needing a half point to retain the cup. After both players hit good approach shots into the 18th, Henley missed his putt and Lowry had a 6-foot birdie putt to retain the Ryder Cup. Down it went. Lowry danced around the green and the US charge had finally been halted just as the gate was about to be broken down. However, no right-minded fan considers retaining to be winning, and everyone needed Europe to win and make history once more. As Ben Griffin saw off Rasmus Højgaard on the last, it was clear half a point had to come from either Hatton or McIntyre. Finally it was done when Hatton halved his match down the last, and with McIntyre winning the last to get another half, the eventual result was USA 13, Europe 15. With 8 of the 11 matches going down the last, this truly was a spectacle and a fabulous way to showcase our amazing sport to the world. This will be talked about for years. Amazingly for Europe, only one player, Ludvig Åberg, picked up a full point in the singles. Finally, the celebrations could begin for Europe, and the fallout for the USA team could be discussed in detail. So that's how Europe completed a historic away win, and one that will forever now be known as the fairy tale of New York. Surprisingly, this result is likely only positive for the Ryder Cup on both sides. It had become clear that this event, although great, was becoming a bit stale in regards to the home team winning virtually all the time, and this flips that on its head. Can Europe now dominate for years to come, or can the US team now find a way to go to Adair Manor in Ireland in 2 years' time and do the unthinkable there by winning? Now, before we get on to the captains and the player ratings, hit that subscribe button. The captains. Let's talk about Luke Donald first, as this one is quite simple. He now goes down as possibly the greatest European captain of all time, having won in 2023 at home in Rome and now in 2025 away in New York. The way he prepares his team is clearly second to none, and it's clear that every player in that European locker room would take a bullet for that guy. The team he puts around himself is exceptional, and no stone appears unturned in his process. His wife must be a saint to have put up with this for 4 years, but she may have to endure longer, as no sooner had Luke lifted the Ryder Cup, there were already chance of 2 more years as they were in Rome. Will it be 3 Ryder Cups for Luke? Only time will tell. But if others have their way, I think it may be a safe bet to say so. Keegan Bradley is a somewhat more complicated picture to paint. I have no doubt in his ability, his commitment and his passion to lead this team to the best of his ability and have the players play for him. Obviously, he will take the majority of the negativity as the captain. And although some of it will be justified, and we will look at this shortly, as with most team sports, usually the team of players that plays better wins. And in my eyes, this is certainly the case here. The USA needs to find a way of not having to fight back on Sundays to be long-term successful in the Ryder Cup going forward in my eyes. So my first point here is the selection process for the USA captain. Obviously the dice was rolled this time around, but I think Bradley would have provided more as a player in this event, so likely this needs looking at again. The player selections. Okay, so Bradley's hands were slightly tied in that he was likely to always going to have to take at least 4 rookies, but I stand by my thoughts that I wouldn't have taken Morikawa, as he just wasn't the player America needed at this point in time. The course setup. We touched on this one a bit earlier, but we have to place the blame here directly on Bradley. Yes, he didn't know the course was going to be as soft as it was, but setting up the course as if it was a birdie fest PGA Tour event when all the Europeans play on the PGA Tour was a huge mistake. I discussed the difficulty of Bethpage Black in my pre-event video, but the course was reduced from a snarling Rottweiler to a cute puppy dog for the best players in the world. Keegan has already owned this and his error, and a big one at that. There were many times when the commentators said he will be glad that is in the rough as it helps to reduce some of the spin. And this just shows the inappropriate way the course was set up, along with the reduction in length of some of the holes, especially the par 3s. Regarding pairings, I think everyone agrees that pairings you expected to perform were outplayed, but putting English and Morikawa out on the first morning raised eyebrows everywhere. But then to repeat that huge error again on day 2 is inexcusable, even if it was a golf ball problem. That pairing was a disaster, and I believe anyone put with Morikawa would likely have lost. Again, this is a Keegan problem, picking Morikawa in the first place and then playing him as he did. The other less problematic item, but maybe worth mentioning, is that the home side has the choice of what format to play in the mornings of day 1 and day 2. With the US being much better 4-ball players than foursomes, and with the obvious ball issues the team had, could starting with 4-balls have got the US team off to a better start on day 1, which could have fed through the event? We will never know the answer, but it seems like an opportunity was missed here. All in all again, I'm not saying Bradley was a bad captain, but a few cumulative issues amounted to considerable problems in my eyes and will unfortunately taint his legacy. So let's rate the players out of 10, starting with the American team. Sam Burns, record 0, 1 and 2, 3 out of 10, didn't win a match and he struggled with the putter, his main weapon. Patrick Cantley, 1, 3 and 1, 3 out of 10. The US would have expected more from Cantley with just 1 win during the event. Bryson DeChambeau, 1, 3 and 1, 5 out of 10. Again, the US would have hoped for more, and although the singles comeback was epic, he did get himself 5 down after 7 when he knew he needed a full point out of that match. Harris English, 0, 2 and 1, 2 out of 10. With his half point being because of Hovland's injury, he just lost both foursomes matches. Ben Griffin, 1, 1 and 0, 5 out of 10 with 1 win and 1 loss. I'm marking him straight down the middle as a rookie. I would have liked to have seen him play at least 1 more game this time around. Russell Henley, 0, 2 and 1, 3 out of 10. His lack of distance really showed up on a wet golf course, and his putting was not great. He only managed a half point from 3 outings. Colin Morikawa, 0, 2 and 1, 2 out of 10. Lost both his foursomes outings and looked like the player he has most of the season. Not good enough to be here on merit. Xander Schauffele, 3, 1 and 0, 8 out of 10. I was pleasantly surprised as I didn't have high expectations based on his season and his recent lack of play, but a great win against Rahm makes him one of the best US players this event. Scotty Scheffler, 1, 4 and 0, 3 out of 10. I think he came up against some great play, but as he is likely to be a stalwart of this team for years to come, he needs to work out how to play pairs over 18 holes. His win over McIlroy was good, but both players looked absolutely done before they even teed off on Sunday. JJ Spawn, 2, 1 and 0, 8 out of 10. Great play from JJ as a rookie, and a shame he wasn't trusted more by Bradley, as he could have had an amazing event. Justin Thomas, 2, 2 and 0, 7 out of 10. 2 wins, 2 losses, and generally decent play, but the US team needed more from their most experienced player. Cameron Young, 3, 1 and 0, 10 out of 10. Don't know what more he could have done as a rookie, and like I called it before the event, was a shining star in an otherwise somewhat lackluster overall US performance. And now let's rate the European team. Ludwig Åberg, 2, 2 and 0, 7 out of 10, purely for the whole point he got in the singles, otherwise it was a middle of the road performance in general. Mats Fitzpatrick, 2, 1 and 1, 7 out of 10. Some great play and he has improved his overall record and his recent form continued. A shame he let the singles lead slip, or it would have been a 9 or 10. Tommy Fleetwood, 4, 1 and 0, 10 out of 10. Even with the singles loss, Fleetwood was a class above virtually everyone else at this event. Tyrrell Hatton, 3, 0 and 1, 9 out of 10. No losses and a great partnership with Rahm. Picked up the winning half in the singles, although I would have expected him to have beaten Morikawa. Rasmus Højgaard, 0, 2 and 0, 2 out of 10. My expectations that he wasn't in form were held true, and after the loss on Friday, he didn't play until the singles, where he lost. Hopefully better to come in the years to come. Victor Hovland, 1, 1 and 1, 5 out of 10. Difficult to rate this as he didn't play the singles, but a solid few pairs matches without looking great. Shane Lowry, 1, 0 and 2, 9 out of 10. I never saw this coming with his current form. He carried McIlroy through the 4-balls on Saturday, and to hold that putt under that pressure on 18 on Sunday, I have to say I was wrong about him. Robert McIntyre, 1, 1 and 1, 6 out of 10. Played some really good golf, but a 1, 1 and 1 record can only max out a 6 for me. Rory McIlroy, 3, 1 and 1, 9 out of 10. To put up with that much abuse all weekend and still play as he did was amazing. He was clearly spent by the time Sunday came around, meaning he just couldn't lead as Europe would have hoped. Jon Rahm, 3, 2 and 0, 8 out of 10, docked points by me purely for the loss against Schauffele in the singles. Justin Rose, 2, 1 and 0, 9 out of 10, 2 brilliant four-ball performances that inspired the team and only just lost out to the amazing Cam Young on Sunday. Sepp Straka, 1, 2 and 0, 2 out of 10. I knew it would be tough given the build-up, and it proved to be so. So there it is. The Ryder Cup is done for another 2 years, until it heads to Adair Manor in Ireland in 2027. Europe achieved the unthinkable, and the USA team nearly completed the greatest comeback in all of sports history. The course was a great venue, but set up poorly, and the fans were rowdy as expected, but sometimes crossed the line. If you have enjoyed my extensive coverage of the Ryder Cup, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below on your experience of the Ryder Cup. I'm Graham, and I'll catch you on the course soon.